Hi, blogging heads. This is Conn Carroll, and we're here for another edition of This Week in Blog. Our guest sparring partner this week is Amanda Terkel, who blogs for ThinkProgress. And Amanda, what did you see in the blogs this week?
Well, this week, clearly what's been in the blogs is all the talk about who's going to become the Democratic nominee and the speeches that Obama, Hillary, and McCain gave this week. And probably one of the most controversial ones was Hillary's. You know, Obama seemed like he was clearly, had the Democratic nomination wrapped up. And Hillary came out and gave this speech that didn't seem like she was conceding at all. It was very controversial. One of the most quoted lines was, she said, actually, I understand that a lot of people are asking, what does Hillary want? What does she want? And she goes on to talk about that she wants to end the war in Iraq, she wants to end health care for every American. And a lot of people, this didn't rub them the right way. Both Democrats and Republicans just thought that
The phrasing was weird.
This was the wrong tone. It was really strange. And she might be making a run for VP.
Yeah, there's lots of talk about her becoming vice president. I thought Miss Laura Daily Kos had a good response to that, which was, if she was going to make the vice president, or make a run for vice president, what would that campaign look like? She says, to speak privately to Obama and to make her case, in public to congratulate him on his great victory, and to take back some of her most damaging attacks on him, to say nothing about the vice presidency except that the choice is and always has been up to the winning candidate and should be, and he had some weeks to enjoy his victory and move fully into a general election mode before he publicly addresses the issue, and that she needs such time. Imagine, on the contrary, that Clinton wanted simultaneously to undercut Obama and to advance her own interests. What then would be her best move? Exactly what she did. And I think there was a pretty common sentiment out there that Hillary, if she does really want the vice president's race, or the vice presidency spot, is going about it in a very bullying, counterproductive way.
And I mean, no one wants to be pressured into doing something. Just like she resisted getting out of the race because of all the pressure she wanted to do on her own terms. Obama also doesn't want to be pressured into picking someone as his VP. And a lot of people are talking about, maybe he should put her in his cabinet and to do some type of issue. Max Bergman at Democracy Arsenal actually proposed her as Secretary of Defense. And perhaps that would be better.
Right. I've seen other posts saying Secretary of Health and Human Services, then she could do try to tackle health care. How do you feel about those suggestions?
I personally like the cabinet ones better than vice president. I mean, I see that. Do you think she'd ever take? Sorry?
Do you think she'd ever take such a spot? I mean, it seems to me if I have a Senate seat locked up like she does in New York, I wouldn't want it. A cabinet seems like a demotion because at most Obama's going to be there for 8 years. And you don't see a lot of cabinet secretaries going on to higher office. Your power is completely derivative from someone else. You're still taking orders from them. I could see why she would want to be vice president, but I don't see any reason why she would want a spot in the cabinet.
Well, I don't know if she'd want it. I think Secretary of Defense would be exciting. She would get to, it's a position that women aren't in. She would be groundbreaking, and it would be very good for her. But beyond that, I'm not sure either. There's talk if she stays in the Senate, maybe one day she could become Senate Majority Leader, which is, far more powerful. Yeah,
I compared her early on to the next Ted Kennedy, which is kind of, with his latest health issues, kind of seems more like a possibility. I don't know if she'd want Senate Majority Leader job. It seems like such a thankless effort. Ted Kennedy's a strong force for liberalism and is a very powerful senator, and he manages to do it all without being majority leader. So why take all on that extra effort for a little payoff?
That's true. It would be a title. I think she would like it if she were ever offered it. But it's clear what's going to happen now is that she is going to become more of an advocate for her causes. Look at John Edwards. He dropped out, and he in many ways is getting an even bigger platform.
Yeah, but he's been not running for president for, since 2004. he has that what was it, a poverty corporation or nonprofit that he runs, which basically served as the foundation for his presidential run. I mean, it's cool and all. He's built something of a platform. I just think as far as brass rings go, the one she already has in the Senate seat is better than any other option out there. Which I guess since we're skeptical that she'd ever want a cabinet seat means how is this healing going to occur?
Well, I mean, I think the Obama people are clearly going to reach out to her, but what I think they also have to do is reach out to her constituency. I mean, that was another part of her speech where she said, I want to make sure that the 18 million Americans who voted for me are going to be respected, heard, and no longer invisible. And Noam Shiver at the New Republic was a little offended by this, that only the people who voted for her should get all of this. But I think it was more just making sure that there will be outreach to women, there will be outreach to working class Americans. People who voted for her will get heard by the Obama campaign.
Yeah, Hillary Rosen had a post at the Huffington Post that was widely quoted on MSNBC, saying that says she supported Hillary all along. But that she's going to enthusiastically support Barack Obama because she writes, because I am not a bargaining chip, I am a Democrat. And I always am very skeptical whenever I hear pundits say that so and so's endorsement really matters, and that so and so's supporters will start healing as soon as so and so endorses them. I don't think Clinton's endorsement of Obama is really going to help soothe the anger of what many Democratic women feel. Dana Goldstein had a piece in The Prospect where she was covering the rules meeting, and she talked to a 51-year-old woman from Buffalo, and she told Dana, nothing could convince her to cast a ballot for Obama, who she considers naive, and most everyone I know feels that way. And I don't really know if this woman feels that, but the campaign lasted so long and was about nothing but identity that I don't think just because they share issues in common, the women are going to... I think they'll end up voting for Obama. I don't think they're going to work hard for him at all. And I don't think the Clintons are either. When you look at a lot of the rhetoric that people are making against Hillary's case for a vice president, they're saying, she won't be that much of a help. The ticket vice president doesn't matter that much. And if you're telling the Clintons over and over again that, they're not going to be a help to the ticket and you don't need them, then they're just going to stay home and not work that hard.
I think the Clintons will help. I don't think they have any other choice. It would look so bad. They would look like sore losers. So I think they will help. To what extent Obama will want them out there publicly. Bill Clinton was criticized a lot for sometimes detracting from Hillary's message. So we'll see how publicly they are. But in terms of whether or not women go, Hillary's endorsement, most people recognize that it's obligatory. It doesn't really mean that much. But I don't know. I think a lot can happen over time. And clearly people who voted for Hillary have more in common with Obama than they do with McCain on policy. And they may not work for him, but I think in the end they will go and vote for him.
Yeah, I think the larger problem with Hillary being on the ticket is the damage that she could do to Obama is already done. Obama had not even given a speech yet, and the RNC was emailing videos to people that were just consisted of Hillary and Bill Clinton saying bad stuff about Obama. Anna House posted such video. Mark Amiter posted this wasn't from a video, but this was just from RNC email. This is Senator Clinton talking in a debate. And I disagree with his continuing to say that we would meet some of the worst dictators in the world without preconditions and without the real, understanding of what we would get from it. And, anyone who's followed this race for this long knows that there's tons of these quotes out there. There's not just one or two. There's going to be tons of video of Hillary Clinton saying things that feed right into what John McCain is going to be criticizing Obama for. And it would just be impossible to have someone on your vice presidential spot on your same ticket whose own words would be able to attack the person at the top of the ticket.
But at the same time, Romney is being considered as one of McCain's vice presidential picks, and he, did the same thing. And Democrats could roll this out too, if they had wanted to. I mean, he constantly criticized McCain on tax cuts, saying Senator McCain was one of 2 Republicans who voted against the Bush tax cuts. He criticized McCain on immigration. McCain lets them come here illegally. Once you put criminals aside, everyone else should be able to stay here for the rest of their life. It's amnesty. He criticized McCain as an insider. So it could go both ways.
And here's the difference, though, is that all the attacks that you just made, or you just mentioned that Romney did make, and there's tons of them on McCain, was Romney attacking McCain from the right and making the criticism of McCain on that he was too lax on immigration, that he was against George Bush's tax cuts. That is something McCain would want to remind voters of, because he's running so strongly away from the Republican brand and saying, I'm not a conservative. And sure, here are all these great, Romney quotes saying, I'm not a, regular Republican, that I'm someone who's different and bipartisan, etc. So it doesn't feed into what Barack Obama is going to be saying about a McCain, the same way as all of Hillary's stuff is going to be feeding into exactly what McCain is going to be saying about Barack Obama.
Well, the Hillary stuff, in some ways brings out people's worst fears about Obama, and I think in some way that's true of McCain, too. Besides the fact that tying him to Bush, which Romney didn't do because Romney wanted to tie himself to Bush in many ways. But, trying to, it was portraying McCain as slightly more left, but it's also portraying McCain as more of a flip-flopper, willing to shift positions. And I think that's a concern, too.
Yeah, the flip-flopping, and Romney did run those ads. I don't think they were particularly effective. I think he had more of the other criticism that we talked about before. We may see him. McCain might not even pick Romney. I kind of doubt it. But if he does, we will see those ads, and I guarantee you, either whether or not Hillary's on the ticket, we'll see a lot of Hillary's video and speeches talking about how
we're already
seeing them, and we will continue to see them. Did you have any other posts about Hillary and women in politics you wanted to bring to the viewers' attention?
Just kind of overall, I think the tenor of the blogosphere from women was just sad that she was done. Most people didn't really like her speech, but her candidacy definitely, brought more women pundits out, focused more on women's issues, how few lawmakers there are. And I think overall, her campaign might not have been run well, but her candidacy, I think, will be remembered very well.
Possibly. I think some real damage has been done the way it was run and how long it lasted, and the degree to which people thought she and her campaign were just making claims that were completely false. I will say that it has brought to the progressives' attention and the Netroots kind of the need for a more feminine voices. Matt Stoller had a post talking about this and saying, first pointing out that women generally are more liberal than men, which we've known for years, and then saying, the more candidates we get that are women, the more reliably liberal they're going to be. And so he says, I think the core challenge for progressive activists is to tell the story of the tough female progressive, the Don Edwards and Darcy Burner, versus the hyper-male Jim Webb. It is a huge paradox that the archetypes we celebrate most, soldier, police officer, hard-nosed prosecutor, are typically good fits for men. By fitting this narrative, relatively conservative Democrats in swing states or even blue districts, and then he names a bunch of names, including Brad Ellsworth, Joe Lang, etc., progressives have less raw material to work with. It should be quite obvious that the root to progressive change lies with more candidates like Leslie Byrne, Donna Edwards, and Darcy Burner than Al Wynn, Joe Sistek, Jim Webb, Chris Carney, etc. Which I thought was actually pretty true. I think there's only so much ground you're going to gain with the Jim Webbs and Heath Schulers of the world when it actually comes time to governing, and that those other probably will be more reliably progressive voices.
I agree, and it's portraying a different view of strength, because in many ways Hillary has been viewed as more hawkish and more to the right of Obama, whether or not that's completely true, but that's how she was often portrayed, a little bit tougher. And so it's good that this campaign brought out that you can be a female candidate and still be considered strong.
Or at least definitely a fighter, as she never quit to the end.
Right.
But, history's written by the victor, so we can move on to Barack Obama, who won. What did you think about the speech? Were you a big fan?
I thought the speech, let's compare it to Hillary and McCain's speech. I thought it was clearly the best. It was the most appropriate in terms of tone. What I liked about his speech is toward the end, he said, "I face this challenge with profound humility and knowledge of my own limitations." Humility is always a nice thing to see from politicians. We don't see that enough. He was very gracious toward Hillary, which I thought was good, and it didn't go into a complete strong attack against McCain, which McCain did against Obama. So overall, I think on both the left and the right blogs, people thought it was well. Mark Ambinder actually called it superliminal. So
yes,
it seemed to be perceived well.
I would just first take issue with the the modesty. Hands down, everyone said it was much better than McCain's speech, which we'll get to eventually. But Mark also had a great post on the speech, which he called Obama's Messiah Watch, which he said was an occasional feature that he's going to start featuring. And says, Senator Barack Obama is capable of writing and speaking the most magnificent, transcendent words. And then he quoted from Obama from last night. I am absolutely certain that generations from now, we will be able to look back and tell our children that this was the moment when we began to provide care for the sick and good jobs for the jobless. This was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal. And then Mark compares that to a chapter in Revelations. I don't think that Obama comparing himself to the time when the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal with his election is modesty in any sense of the word. But the speech was largely well received. One other post that I thought was dead on was Jonah Goldberg, who called Obama's speech the purest vindication of George Lakoff. Goldberg writes, "Recall that Lakoff is the intellectual huckster who so wowed the Democratic Party in the lefty blogosphere for a few years ago. A linguistics professor, Lakoff claims himself a metaphor analyst. His central intellectual shtick was to argue over and over again that liberals are right about everything, but Democrats are saddled with the wrong labels and terms to describe their views. So Democrats must come up with new labels to describe the same old agenda. Trial lawyers, call them public protection attorneys. Don't talk about environmental protection, talk about poison-free communities." So he goes on. "Who's laughing now? There's almost nothing whatsoever that is new about Barack Obama. He reflects no break with liberal orthodoxy, save perhaps at the flimsiest of edges. He is a Ted Kennedy liberal, a McGovernite, and the least triangulated politician we've seen in years. But he talks so pretty. He sounds new. He certainly looks new. He's the triumph of Lakovian repackaging. And so far it looks like it will keep working. Congrats to Dr. Lakoff."
Well, so is Jonah talking that Obama's specific rhetoric, he's implying a lot of the techniques of Lakoff, or more just kind of Obama himself is being repackaged?
That Obama is repackaging. That Obama is taking a lot of the same old policies that haven't changed since Jimmy Carter, and by pushing them into what Ambinder points out is religious, almost religious sometimes wording and phrasing. He's making it more appealing.
I think quite honestly, a liberal in those veins running right now, I think much of that is new. We haven't had that in a while, and he has been new in the way he has organized and the way he's used the internet, reached out to people, adopt.
Well, that's all process, though.
Well, that is, but that's part. To say that the only thing that he has contributed is repackaging himself and his rhetoric. I don't think that's the only thing he's contributed that's new.
Fair enough. Which which is a good transition to kind of our next topic, which is would Obama have won, or why did Obama win? Atrios had a series of posts talking about of all the reporting that he keeps seeing, whether it's the Washington Post or MSNBC, everyone keeps talking about what Clinton did wrong and keeps talking about the process stuff that you were just talking about Obama working the web well, fundraising well, and Matthew Iglesias makes this point too, that no one ever mentions Iraq, and that without Hillary Clinton's Iraq vote, the Barack Obama candidacy doesn't happen. Where do you fall down on that?
I agree with that. I think if she had voted no on the Iraq War, or if Barack Obama, hadn't said something.
You mean if she had voted no on the Iraq War?
Right. If she voted no on the Iraq War, and if Obama hadn't come out against it, and if they started off kind of the same place on the Iraq War, I think that she is much more likely to have won. And Obama, what would have been his claim? He pitched himself in the beginning as I would have voted against the Iraq War, and I came out against it. That's how he got a lot of attention. So I think that's right, and that needs to be talked about more.
But at the same time, Dennis Kucinich actually voted against the war, and yet, he was never really taken seriously. So it's something more than just Iraq.
Well, it was also Obama. As we talked about, Obama's packaging. He's a new, exciting candidate. He is a gifted speaker that, some people may consider Dennis Kucinich a gifted speaker, but I don't think
Not you, huh?
Compares to Barack Obama. And, Dennis Kucinich had a lot of slightly, off-the-wall, extraordinarily left-wing ideas. So I think, Obama was a little more accepted into the mainstream, and that's part of the reason that Kucinich didn't take off.
So do you think Iraq, now that it has been the thing that catapulted Obama into the nomination, do you think it will be the issue that helps him win the presidency?
I think it will be a big part. McCain is certainly saying that he wants to make it a big part because he's saying, I pushed the surge, it's working. So, I'm more credible on this and can lead us into the next administration. And Obama's saying, listen, it's still not going well. You weren't right a lot of the time, so, listen to me. So I think that'll definitely
Is Obama saying that the surge isn't going well?
Is the surge going well?
No, is Obama saying that the surge isn't going well?
Obama's saying that the surge has reduced violence, but I don't think he says it's the only reason. We hear from even generals who are saying that it's part of the reason, but more than anything, it's just been luck that the violence has gone down.
Just luck?
That's what Petraeus's advisor Stephen Biddle said.
Yeah. See, this is why it's such a debate that McCain really, really wants to have. Is there's a great YouTube going around that Rich Lauer posted at the corner, and it's of David Axelrod saying this week that, of course Obama believed the surge would work, and then it's followed up by a clip of Obama saying 8 months ago, of course the surge will not work. And Republicans are very eager to have this point because they strongly believe that it's not luck. Petraeus has spoken here, and so is General Ordinero is the one who's going to be taking over for him in Iraq. And they're very clear that the surge and the increase of troops was absolutely necessary to the decrease we're seeing now. And McCain advocated that from the beginning. So, clips of David Axelrod saying Obama believed the surge would work, followed up by, clips of Obama saying the surge will not work, will be played many times. I wouldn't be surprised to see it eventually in a campaign ad.
Well, I think we also have to discuss what does work mean. Does it mean reducing violence? I think most lawmakers admit that that's true. But, if you talk about an overall picture, Army Chief of Staff George Casey said the surge has sucked all the flexibility out of the system, and we need to find a way of getting back into balance. So while it may have reduced violence in Iraq, overall it's not healthy for the militaries. And, we're seeing still a lot of stalemate in terms of what the Iraqi parliament is doing in political progress. So, has it worked? If all you want to do is just
David Axelrod thinks it's worked.
Sorry?
So David Axelrod says it worked this week.
Well, I didn't see his whole quote, but was he talking about reducing violence? I don't know what he was talking about.
He was talking about the surge.
But the surge, worked how? What did it do?
It made Iraq a more safe place.
That may be true, but I still think that Obama will have a case to make that that's not a reason to stay in Iraq. McCain objects to his 100 years comment that he doesn't want to, wage a 100-year war, that he wants the war to be over and then to keep troops in there for a long time. But the question is, what if the war does go on 100 years? What if it, when is McCain willing to say enough is enough?
Well, apparently it's all going to get solved in 4 years because McCain had that speech last week, 2 weeks ago, where he such an odd speech. He said that it was a speech given as if it was 2012 and he was celebrating the accomplishments of his administration, which included ending the war in Iraq. So he's going to end it by 2012, and he said so last week. So I don't know how you can argue with that.
We'll see if that happens.
But as long as we're on McCain's speaking abilities, he did not get many good reviews at the corner. I'll start off with some of the nicer ones. Amy Holmes writes, McCain's speech was creaky, ungracious, and unnecessary. I never understand why politicians don't take the opportunity, when so easily presented, to simply be gracious and hold their fire. Mark Levin writes, other than freezing discretionary spending, including battling earmarks, how does McCain reform the government? I'm not certain I heard any, or at least not many. Much of what I heard in this speech is not unlike the way McCain approached the debate over McCain-Feingold and comprehension immigration reform, i.e. that his position is right and those who oppose his position are partisan or worse. Then on the funnier side, Jonah Goldberg writes, Obama's speech versus McCain. Substance aside, Obama crushed McCain in all ways that matter. Aesthetically, politically, rhetorically, it boiled down to Godzilla versus Bambi, and amazingly enough, McCain was Bambi. And Catherine Jean Lopez writes, John McCain seriously needs some of those screaming girls behind him. Okay, I'll set up for proof that people are awake at the end of his speech. Did you watch it? Did you like it?
Well, 1 second. You left out the best one,
Oh.
Andy McCarthy.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was editing beforehand. I tried to cut him down, but go ahead with Andy's.
Andy McCarthy did kind of a mock-up of a poll and said, would you rather A, watch McCain's speech, or B, be waterboarded? So he clearly didn't like it. I mean, I watched it, and I thought, again, I basically agreed with the people at the corner, which I find myself not doing much. It was
Maybe you just don't read it enough.
I don't think that's why, but I mean the tone was just completely wrong. It was so much like his other speeches where he kind of rehashed his policy positions when the occasion called for something newer, something less like an attack speech.
But he said change at least 50 times. So it is change because he used the word.
He did use change a lot, but it was interesting too to analyze what changed. Change, Obama clearly means, I want change, a complete change in policies, even who I am is a complete change. McCain's change seems to be more that I agree with Bush on a lot of policies. He just messed them up. I can do better. And he just kind of wants a change in management. So they both talked about change, but they're very clearly different ideas of change.
Yes, and as Levin points out, even when McCain talks about change, most of the time it's not what conservatives hope he means. And,
right.
And generally it's, I'm right on campaign finance reform, I'm right on comprehensive immigration, and you're not. But there is, of course, the more partisan in the conservative blogosphere. Hugh Hewitt at Town Hall wrote, I can understand CNN's Jeffrey Toobin slamming McCain's speech as terrible, dull, and poorly attended. He's in the tank for Obama, and on such things the left passes great weight. But I don't understand the pile-on at the corner. He goes on, I battled for anyone but McCain for a very long time now. But now the choice isn't whether I prefer a different GOP nominee or whether McCain could use a better backdrop or more skilled advancement. It's whether we fight the war to win or just give up. It's disturbing to see some on the right, easily distracted from William F. Buckley, would never have lost sight of. This is a very serious business, and the nagging of our conservative nominee over trivialities is a gift to Obama. And this was kind of carried on later in this very week. McCain holds a weekly blogger conference call, and I've been on the call a number of times, but I'd say about a month ago, my invitation started getting lost in the mail. But anyways, Quinn Hillier, who writes for the Examiner, it's very hard to. I'm sure you've been on these conference calls too, and the question order.
We haven't been invited.
Oh no. Well, at least I don't know. I'm sure the Clinton Obama canes have conference calls that you guys are invited to. No? Yes?
Not always.
No? But anyways, McCain's been inviting everyone to these calls, including Talking Points Memos has been invited, and the New Republic was on this call. But anyways, Quinn Hillier, who's running for the Examiner, got on and asked a question about McCain and some of the rhetoric Quinn thought he used during the immigration brigade. Quinn accused him of calling opponents of amnesty supporters of Jim Crow, and McCain said he had never used that phrase. And Quinn thought he did. People went back and looked at the video. Turns out McCain didn't. But the Jim Crow line aside, there was definitely a feeling within the conservative blogosphere community that McCain's rhetoric at the time was very dismissive of conservatives, and that was more of the heart of Quinn's question: is why do you keep slamming conservatives within your campaign, and how do you think you can unite the party when you keep distancing yourself from us? And this turned into a larger discussion in the conservative blogosphere over the use of a outreach person in the Hispanic community, Juan Hernandez, that McCain has, and it shows there's, as the review of his speech to the corner, there's a great dissonance in the conservative message machine about McCain, and it's the normal outlets and the new outlets of the machine just aren't going to slavishly message for him the way they have for candidates in the past.
That's right, and I think he actually has done a good job in terms of he's trying to reach out and holding these blogger conference calls for both conservatives and liberals. And I think that's a lot more than some of the other campaigns have done. And we've certainly seen him try to court the media by turning on the charm, having barbecues, and media ethics aside, I think it's a clever strategy on his part to show I'm a real person. So he's trying to appeal to them on a personal level in hopes of influencing their coverage. But certainly with conservatives in the past, he said some incredibly dismissive stuff, and now he's trying to take it back. Yeah, I mean,
there's no doubt about it. I think the larger point I think that we're missing here is that the left has built up a formidable message machine in the past couple of years, including ThinkProgress, credit where credit is due, but it extends to other sites. And Politico had an article this past week about what was generally seen as a reliably Republican conservative voice, Matt Drudge. In fact, has been very hard on McCain, has portrayed him as old and cranky and all the negative images that Democrats would want to, while at the same time being very positive of Obama and highlighting his victories. And so the article by John Martin and Ben Smith was basically questioning what is the Drudge Report, what role is he going to play in this campaign, and what does it say about the effect that new media is going to have for John McCain.
Yeah, I thought this article was really interesting. I mean, I found it completely interesting that Drudge has clearly portrayed Obama well. Just the pictures he uses portray Obama really well, and the pictures of McCain and Hillary look absolutely terrible. So, I mean, part of what they point to is that Obama has a lot of international appeal. I mean, we saw stories when he won the Democratic nomination that all these international papers were hailing his victory. And Drudge is trying to appeal to an international audience, and so this may help him with that.
Yeah, there was an angle in the article where they're talking about maybe Drudge is trying to open up to a new market. But I really think it's more of what they supposed, where Drudge is more libertarian politics. You constantly see him linking to stuff about British surveillance, surveillance here, and there's definitely more, campaign finance reform, global warming legislation. There's definitely more of an authoritarian aspect to McCain's republicanism that you can see as a more libertarian person would object to. So that might be enough for Drudge to not be enthusiastic about supporting McCain.
I mean, McCain, too, in terms of reaching out to new media, he certainly has to catch up in terms of the organizing and fundraising aspect. That's, I think that's one area where he's still incredibly deficient and, can help his message if he, gets on Facebook more, does the social networking. That's something Obama's been very good at.
Yeah, but is that so much of, like you said, McCain's been, holding these blogger conference calls, and, he has his own Facebook page and has all their stuff. Is it that McCain's not trying hard enough, or Obama's doing something better, or is it just that Obama as a cultural phenomenon is stronger and there's more younger people interested in Obama than there are about McCain?
I think that's part of it, but I also think McCain's trying to reach out to people and shape their message. Obama's trying to reach out to them just more overall and get them involved in his campaign, and that can often lead to message. Once they're involved, he can text message them and say, tell your friends this, and people are more likely to do it. McCain has to do more of that overall organizing that he hasn't focused on. And I think too with bloggers, McCain in the past has been a little dismissive of bloggers and new media. He's called bloggers, in 2006 he said that bloggers were infatuated with self-expression, and he's been pretty nasty in the past, so I think bloggers are a little reluctant to embrace him.
Possibly. I think there's a big difference between bloggers and kind of newer media outreach, social networking outreach. But like you said, McCain's been reaching out to bloggers, spends the time with the blogger call, something Obama doesn't do, and there are equally dismissive comments from Obama with specifically Daily Kos saying he's never read anything new there, and he doesn't spend much time there, and of course the ham-handed way the Obama campaign took over a MySpace page from a volunteer kind of shows that, they're not quite as gifted with this social networking thing as everyone would have them believe. That, in fact, they did alienate a lot of people in the community. I remember Matt Stoller and a whole bunch of other people in the open left side of things were very upset with the way the Obama campaign handled the MySpace takeover. So, again, I don't think it's that Obama's campaign is doing anything better on that end. I just think that there's the universe, the demographics of people that are there are more naturally inclined towards Obama than they are McCain.
But you don't think fundraising and organizing overall that the campaign has been better than McCain?
Yeah, no. Obama's getting all this, money from, from raising money on the internet, and there's just not a lot different mechanically that they're doing on the internet. Just Obama is a lot more popular there. Mm-hmm. Unless you can point to something specifically, technically, process-wise, tactically, that McCain's doing, and that Obama's doing differently on the web fundraising than Obama is. I don't think. They're both sending out emails. You can, raise money right through the site there. It's just that there's a much larger universe of people that are sympathetic to Obama's message and ready to type in credit card numbers in the online world than there are for McCain.
That could be. I have, I seem to get a lot more in terms of, through Facebook, through MySpace, through all of that from Obama than McCain. That may be simply because they identify me as a liberal and the McCain campaign doesn't try to reach out. But I do think you're right that clearly there is more appeal to him than there is to McCain, as there was with Hillary, and why she had such a tough time in the blogosphere and with the activists, as we already talked about. So, so I do think that is part of it. And certainly, the LA Times had a recent article about the trouble he's been having with YouTube, and Brave New Films, which is run by Robert Greenwald, has been really aggressive in trying to portray the real McCain. And just YouTube video after YouTube video getting millions of hits portraying McCain as, all the stereotypes he wants to avoid, old, cranky, flip-flopping, and those have been incredibly popular, and the McCain campaign hasn't quite been able to kind of get around that yet.
Yeah, but I guess that's kind of proving my point, is that unless you're suggesting that the Obama campaign is coordinating with Brave New Films and Robert Greenwald, which would be interesting if you were making that accusation.
No.
No, you're not. What we're seeing is that the people that have the skills and are in this medium already and have the wherewithal to create a bunch of YouTube videos and get them out there are more sympathetic to Obama. So it's not necessarily anything that the campaigns are doing, just that the universe of people out there who are using this medium already are more sympathetic to Obama.
Well, is there a similar effort? Are there any similar efforts on the right that is going to go after Obama that you know of?
I have been in meetings where it said we need to be doing more of this. Who's going to do it? So no. I mean, yeah. I mean, the acknowledgment's there that the infrastructure on the right is lacking, and there's a patchwork effort to address it. One of which is the blog I work on every day, the Foundry. It's loosely modeled after you guys at ThinkProgress. Although really it's more like your Wonk Room creation than the ThinkProgress creation, which
that's true.
Which is much more. You guys have a different tax status than we do, so you guys can be much more openly partisan. Every story is McCain sucks or Obama's great, whereas the Wonk Room and the Foundry are different. It's more of cap and trade is bad, free trade's wonderful, less. The hook is always a policy, and incidentally mentions politicians. Where ThinkProgress policies afterthought, and the politicians are the hook.
Well, not so the lawyers don't get mad at me. I mean, policy is still ours. I think we're considered a 501c4, so we can do some advocacy, and we actually have the same tax status as the Wonk Room. We just try to. I mean, we try to do policy. It's just, I guess, a little more pegged to what's hot in the news that day.
Right. Well, I mean, but even then, the Wonk Room, you're not going to see. I mean, if you turn it into any day on ThinkProgress, every story is going to be in the headline about a politician, and there may or may not be a policy being attached to it. Whereas if you go to like the Wonk Room and everything else, the peg is usually going to be a policy, and it may or may not have something to do with politician.
Yes,
exactly.
That's correct.
Well, yes, and it's every day that I see something on ThinkProgress in the morning, and then see Keith Olbermann talking about it on Countdown later that night. Just showing how well the left message machine has grown in recent years. But there's also
a lot of it was modeled on the rights. Clearly, Cap came after Heritage, and the people. I wasn't here when it was founded, but I believe looked a lot at what Heritage was doing, which just shows when you're out of. I guess when conservatives are out of power or liberals are out of power, you have time to rebuild. Right.
Re-strategize, come up with new things that you want to do, and ThinkProgress is definitely one of those projects. But you distracted me from my transition to Keith Olbermann and MSNBC, and there's been a spate of articles in the Washington Post, a New York Times blog, and Media Bistro has been covering this about, as Howard Kurtz puts it, MSNBC leaning left and getting flack from both sides, and the New York Times blog puts it, is MSNBC a political liability to NBC? And basically the common theme through all these stories is, of course, that Keith Olbermann is very obviously a liberal activist. He blogs at Daily Kos and is proud of it, and is having him and his staff, which because of budget constraints, they're all working very closely together up there in 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Is that rubbing over into NBC News, and is Keith Olbermann's brand as the anchor of NBC News' political coverage whenever there's a night? Keith Olbermann is going to be anchoring their political coverage. Does that threaten the credibility of NBC as a news brand? Which is actually something I talked to Bill a number of times. And it's being picked up more and more in the mainstream press.
Well, have you seen MSNBC's coverage and election night coverage since Olbermann's been on?
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for NBC's political director Chuck Todd, so I'm an MSNBC fan. So yeah, I watch MSNBC a lot.
Mm-hmm. And you've seen it change a little since Olbermann's been there?
Have I seen it? You mean the hard news coverage?
Or I guess what you were mentioning, the election night coverage when he's on.
Well, the election night coverage when you have Keith Olbermann hosting it, yeah, that's much different. Mm-hmm. You have more voices like Rachel Maddow, you have the whole host of other people, or Robinson, that they bring in. What's his name? Jonathan Alter from Newsweek, etc. as contributors. And the only conservative voice, well, I guess they have two conservative voices. The only two real conservative voices you have on MSNBC are Patrick Buchanan, who is a paleo-conservative, way beyond George Bush. He's against free trade. He was always against the Iraq War. So his instincts are conservative on a lot of things, but he hardly speaks for where most conservatives are today. And then you have Joe Scarborough, who, bless his heart, most people think has spent a little too much time in New York. So, and those are the two lone conservative voices, and everyone else is left and lefter, which I think is fine. I think it's a fine decision to make. Keith Olbermann's obviously making them money hand over fist. And I, it's a good conservative. I don't begrudge them for that. I just think they should go ahead and embrace it and become the Fox News of the right. And NBC News should just, get used to the fact that their credibility is shot.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it means completely that NBC's credibility is shot. I mean, people still go on. I mean, well, Obama wasn't going to for a while. A lot of people still consider Chris Wallace a lot more fair than they would say Hannity or O'Reilly, and he's on Fox more than he's on Fox News. But MSNBC, I think, clearly is some of its shows and commentators are becoming more liberal. I don't think anyone questions that, and I don't know what they're planning. If they're planning to become the liberal version of Fox News, but I haven't seen as much their election coverage going left. Like you said, a lot of their commentators appear to be liberal, but they do bring on some conservatives. So it'll be interesting to see which way MSNBC goes. Although, some, Hillary's campaign hated MSNBC and thought it was, in the tank for Obama. So not all Democrats like it.
Well, yes, that's definitely true. You had Chris Matthews openly saying very early on, Barack Obama inspires me. So it's hardly as if those charges of them being in the tank were not founded on anything. But yeah, I think the problem existed even before Olbermann was there. I mean, Schuster's always been very obviously hardcore liberal. Most conservatives aren't big a fan of Andrea Mitchell. I think the larger concern is, to your flagship, Meet the Press with Tim Russert. Having Tim Russert come in on those election news nights at MSNBC and having to, as Media Bistro's Stephen Krakauer says, take questions from a Daily Kos blogger. He's referring to Keith Olbermann. Is Russert going to be able to maintain a cloak of centrality, a cloak of impartiality when he is a major figure in the MSNBC coverage?
Well, I mean, I think Chris Wallace, when he often goes on Fox News, on Fox and Friends in the morning, and no one would describe the three hosts as liberal in any way, and he manages to go on, take questions from them, and still come out okay. I think it's Tim Russert. I mean, he's certainly not liked by a lot of liberals and is considered often way too conservative and too light on conservatives that he questions. So, or a lot of times also just criticized for his coverage isn't substantive enough. He kind of focuses too much on the gotcha questions. But I don't think it will hurt Tim Russert and really affect him in any way. I think those can still be seen as separate.
I guess I would just say not everyone. I guess I would just say I would say that Chris Wallace has a more partisan reputation because of his Fox News affiliation than Tim Russert does, and that Tim Russert is in danger of heading into Chris Wallace territory, and that there's going to be some value lost there for NBC.
There may be, although Tim Russert may be just not liked by other side. I mean, right? I think most conservatives like Chris Wallace. Certainly most liberals at this time, it seems that a lot of them don't. He's constantly criticized by Media Matters and by the American Prospect. So I don't think either side will be claiming him anytime soon.
Right, which I guess, goes back to what I said, which is if the right is viewing him as more and more liberal and the left doesn't like him, it's trouble for NBC and Tim Russert.
Maybe, but I think, people he interviews still like him, and many journalists if no one likes them, they consider they're doing their job.
That is true. And that's a good place to end it. We're 50 minutes in here.
Great.
Well, it's good talking to you, Amanda, and hopefully we'll have you on again sometime.
Great, I hope so. Thank you for inviting me.